How many of the knives sitting in your drawer right now are worth less than they were before the last time you tried to clean one up? My name is Walt Rennick. I am 71 years old. I spent 34 years as a tool and die maker in Ohio, and since I retired, I have had somewhere around 9,000 blades pass across my bench, mostly other people's knives that I clean up and hand back. In the next 20 minutes, I'm going to give you 8 steps in order that take a rusted, stiff, ugly old knife and turn it into something that reads as expensive in the hand. Total cost for all 8 if you own nothing today is under $40. Most of you already own 6 of them. Here is the part that is going to bother some of you. A luxury blade is not a shiny blade. Shine is the cheapest thing you can put on steel. Shine takes $9 of abrasive in one afternoon, and any fool with a drill can do it. What makes a knife feel expensive is uniformity. A dark and even surface, tight joints, a handle that has been fed instead of stripped, and a maker's mark you can still read. The rust is not your enemy here, the sandpaper is. You have all seen those silent restoration videos. Hundreds of millions of views. A brown lump of a knife goes into a jar, comes out chrome bright, and nobody says a single word about what happened in between. What those videos do not tell you is that a good share of those knives were destroyed on camera. The maker's stamp was sanded flat. The edge was ground on a belt until it changed color, which means the hardness is gone and is never coming back. A factory satin finish that took a specialist to apply was buffed into a mirror it never had. Original bone was thrown in the trash and replaced with poured resin in 3 colors. Quiet, pretty, and the value is gone. I am not going after any person, and I am not naming any channel. I am going after the method, because the method is wrong. I have no room to talk from a high place. For my first 11 years, I did all of it. 80 grit on a sanding block. A wire wheel and a 1/2-inch drill, vinegar overnight in a peanut butter jar because somebody's uncle said so. Motor oil out of the drain pan for the pivot, a bench grinder for the edge. I ruined knives I would give real money to have back, including my father-in-law's old timer, and I think about those more than I think about the ones I saved. An old appraiser at a knife show in Columbus watched me do a demonstration in about 1988 and said one sentence to me afterward that I have repeated for close to 40 years. You can always take more steel off tomorrow. You can never put it back. If you have a knife you inherited and have been afraid to touch, tell me what it is and what is stamped on the tang, which is the part of the blade that disappears down into the handle. I read those, and I will tell you now that the 8th step is the cheapest thing on this whole list. It costs about $1.50, it takes 90 seconds, it involves no skill whatsoever, and it has saved more blades than the other 7 put together. Most people skip it because it happens after the fun part is over. Step 1 is to wash the knife and read it before you touch it with anything abrasive. Hot water, a drop of dish soap, an old toothbrush, and if there is grease in the joint, a splash of odorless mineral spirits from the paint aisle, about $4 a quart, and it will last you 5 years. What you are doing is not cleaning. You are diagnosing. Under 60 years of pocket lint and dried oil, there is information. There is a tang stamp that tells you the maker, the pattern number, and very often the year. There is the difference between red rust and black patina, which you cannot see through grime. Red rust is hydrated iron oxide. It is porous, it holds moisture against the steel, and it is still actively eating your knife right now. Black patina is magnetite, it is stable, it is stuck down tight, and it is protecting the metal underneath. Those two things look similar under dirt, and they are opposites. The whole job of a good restoration is usually to convert red into black, not to sand everything down to bare white metal. The Canadian Conservation Institute and the National Park Service both publish guidance on the care of metal objects, and both of them say the same thing in polite museum language. Stabilize first, remove as little original surface as possible. I ignored that for a decade because I thought it applied to museums and not to a working pocket knife. It applies to both. A case white tee from before 1965, back when they were still stamping carbon steel instead of the true sharp stainless that came later, is worth around $200 with a readable stamp and about $25 with the stamp sanded off. That is $175 of damage and 40 seconds of enthusiasm. Step 2 is masking, and it costs about $2. Before any abrasive, any acid, any polish touches that blade, you protect the tang stamp and any etch on the flat of the blade. I use clear nail polish out of my wife's bathroom drawer, painted over the stamp with a fine brush, and left to dry 20 minutes. Blue painter's tape works too, but polish gets down into the letters. The stamp is not decoration, it is the birth certificate. The maker, the pattern, the date code, the country of origin, all of it lives in a rectangle about the size of a grain of rice, and it was struck maybe 8/1000ths of an inch deep, which is roughly 2 sheets of newspaper. Take 3/1000ths off with sandpaper and it goes soft. Take 5 off and it is gone forever. The National Knife Collectors Association and the Case Collectors Club have both published dating tables that run entirely on those stamps, and once the stamp is gone, your knife is no longer an 1898 Sheffield or a 1943 military issue. It is a knife. When you are done with acid and abrasive, the polish comes off with a cotton ball and a little acetone, and the stamp underneath is exactly as sharp as it was when you started. Let me stop here for a second. What I just walked you through, reading a blade before you touch it and protecting the mark, is about 1 page of Chapter 4 of a book I wrote called The Restorer'S Bench. There are 11 more chapters. It runs 158 pages, 12 chapters, and it is organized by decision rather than by tool, so you look up the problem in front of you instead of reading front to back. It comes with the bench cards, which are laminated quick sheets for the bench, a safety card, and an index by symptom, so brown spots or stiff pivot or loose scale each send you to a page. It is set up so that tonight, with the knife from the drawer in your hand, you know what you are holding and where to stop. Link is down in the description and the code is on screen. This is the night you stop being afraid of that drawer. Step 3 is the acid, and this is where most people go wrong by reaching for the wrong bottle. Citric acid, food grade, in the canning aisle or online, about $8 a pound, and you will use a tablespoon at a time, 1 to 2 tablespoons in a quart of warm water, which is one of those big soup bowls full. The blade goes in for 30 minutes, then you check it, maybe an hour on heavy rust. Never overnight. Citric acid chelates iron, which means the molecule wraps around the iron in the rust and carries it off into the water, and it works far more gently on the sound metal underneath than a mineral acid does. Vinegar is 5% acetic acid, and vinegar does not know when to quit. When the rust runs out, it starts pitting the good steel, and that is why a knife left in vinegar overnight comes out gray, frosted, and covered in little craters you can feel with a fingernail. Coca-Cola is theater. It carries phosphoric acid at something like 0.05%. The rest is sugar water. It makes a nice video, and it does almost nothing. When the citric bath is done, and this is the part people skip, you neutralize. A tablespoon of baking soda in the same quart of water, 2 minutes, then dry it hard with a hair dryer on low, or the blade will flash rust orange in front of you in about 10 minutes. Gloves on, and do this by an open window or in the garage with the door up. Citric is mild, but it is still an acid, and you do not want it drying on your hands. If the knife is genuinely collectible, there is a better path, which is electrolysis, because electrolysis reduces the rust back toward iron rather than dissolving your base metal. Washing soda for the electrolyte, low amperage, and your sacrificial anode must be mild steel. Never stainless. Stainless anodes release hexavalent chromium into the bath, which is a known carcinogen, and now you have a bucket of poison in your garage. Step 4 is abrasive, done by hand, and this is the single biggest difference between my bench and the silent videos. No drill, no wire wheel, no bench grinder, no belt sander. Start with 0.0s and steel wool, which is about $2 a pad, loaded with mineral oil so it cuts wet. Steel wool with oil will lift loose red rust and leave the black patina sitting there because patina is harder and more adherent than rust is. That alone finishes maybe half the knives that come to me. If you need to go further, wet sandpaper on a hard flat backer. A paint stir stick works, starting at 600 grit and stepping to 800, then 1200, which under your thumb feels about like a business card. Always in one direction along the length of the blade, following the factory grain lines. Here is why the power tools are banned. Steel is hardened by heating and quenching, then tempered, which is the low-temperature bake afterward that trades a little hardness for the toughness that keeps an edge from chipping. That temper sits somewhere around 400 to 500 degrees Fahrenheit for most knife steels. A wire wheel on a thin edge will put it past 400 in a few seconds. You will see the steel go straw yellow around 400 degrees and blue near 570. The moment you see color, the hardness under that color is gone permanently, and no amount of oil or polish brings it back. The ASM heat treating references have those color and temperature relationships published in plain tables. I ground on carbon steel with a bench grinder for 11 years before anybody explained that to me. And if you are still tempted by mirror polish, understand what you are erasing. Almost every factory knife made before the 1970s left the plant with a satin finish. A directional grain put on with belts. Buff that into a mirror, and any collector who picks it up knows in 1 second that it has been refinished, and refinished knives sell for a fraction of honest ones. The expensive look isn't even satin, not chrome. Step 5 is the joint, and on a folder, it is what separates a nice knife from a knife that feels like a nice knife. A slip joint pocket knife has a back spring under tension, and 40 years of pocket grit turns that action from a crisp snap into a gritty crunch. Cost here is about $6. Flush the pivot with a solvent, a few drops of mineral spirits worked in while you open and close the blade 30 or 40 times, then hold it open over a rag and flush again until what comes out is clean, then dry it completely and only then lubricate. 2 drops of food-grade mineral oil if the knife touches food, or a light machine oil if it does not. Never leave a penetrating spray in the joint as the final step, because those are solvents. They evaporate, and in 6 months you have a dry pivot and a rusty spring. What you want at the end is what old cutlers called good walk and talk. The blade pulls with steady resistance and snaps closed with a sound like a rifle bolt. That sound is the whole reason people pay $400 for a knife. I will be straight with you. What fits in 20 minutes here is a sample. The Restorer's Bench is the whole thing written down. 12 chapters, and each one is built around a decision instead of a product. So it tells you when to use an acid and when not to, when to stop sanding, when a knife should be left exactly as it is. It is set in large print because I am 71 and I know who is reading it, and the entire bench it describes costs under $40 with no machinery of any kind. Every technique carries a line I call "Check Me," with a published dated source next to it: National Park Service, Canadian Conservation Institute, the ASM handbooks, so you are not taking my word for anything. There is a 60-day guarantee on it, which is just there so nobody has to gamble. If you have been sitting through this thinking about a knife that outlived the man who carried it, that is exactly who I wrote it for. The link sits in the description under this video, and the code on screen goes to the same place. Some knives deserve better than a drawer. Step 6 is the handle, and this is where good restorations die. Bone, stag, and antler are organic. They are porous and they hold moisture in a certain balance, and when you soak them in water or bake them with heat, they shrink and they crack, and the cracks show up 2 weeks after you thought you were finished. Do not put a bone handle knife in an ultrasonic cleaner, and do not put it in the dishwasher. Clean the scales with a rag and mineral oil, about $3 a bottle at the drugstore. Let it sit an hour. Wipe it back. That is the whole procedure. Jigged bone that has gone chalky and gray will come back deep amber from oil alone, and it looks like a $200 knife again. Now the important part: if your knife was made between roughly 1920 and 1950, and the scales are candy-striped, pearl-swirled, or that peculiar cracked ivory color, you may have celluloid. Celluloid is nitrocellulose, and it degrades on its own schedule. As it breaks down, it outgasses nitric compounds, and those gases rust the blade of that knife and every knife stored in the same box beside it. That is the real answer to the mystery of the collection where 3 knives in a drawer went orange, and nobody can explain why. If you find celluloid, and it usually smells faintly sharp and sour, that knife gets stored alone in open air and never in a sealed case. Step 7 is the edge, and I want you to slow down more here than anywhere else. A stone and a strop, and you can get a decent combination water stone for around $25 that will outlive both of us. Soak it, keep it wet, and work with light pressure, about the weight of your hand and nothing more. Angle matters more than grit. Most American pocket knives and kitchen knives want somewhere near 20 degrees per side, and the easy way to find it without a gauge is to stack 2 quarters under the spine of a 4-inch blade, which is about the length of your index finger. Work one side until you can feel a burr along the whole length with your thumb dragged across the edge, not along it. That burr is the tell. It means the 2 bevels have finally met. Then flip, match it, and take the burr off on the back of a leather belt or a strip of cardboard. Nobody should be touching a grinder for this. A belt sander removes in 1 pass what a stone removes in 50, and it will blue the tip of a thin blade before you have time to react. I put a hollow in a customer's Dexter carving knife in about 1994 because I was in a hurry on a Sunday afternoon and my coffee had gone cold. He was polite about it. I was not. And step 8, the one I promised you, protection and storage, and it runs about $1.50 a knife. When everything else is done and the blade is clean and dry, you put a barrier on it. Paste wax, the kind sold for furniture and floors, about $6 a can that will do 200 knives. A pea-sized amount on a rag, thin coat. Let it haze for 10 minutes. Buff it off. Microcrystalline wax if you want the museum version, and that is what conservators use because it is stable and reversible. For a knife that touches food, plain food-grade mineral oil instead, reapplied every couple of months. Now the free half of this step, which matters more than the wax. Never store a knife in a leather sheath. Leather is tanned with salts. It is hygroscopic, meaning it pulls moisture out of the air and holds it, and it will press that wet, salty surface against your blade for 11 months a year. I have seen more good hunting knives ruined by their own sheath than by any other single cause. Store the knife out of the sheath in a drawer with a strip of vapor phase corrosion inhibitor paper, which runs about $1 a sheet, and puts a molecular film on the steel and keep the humidity in that room under 50%. That is it. 90 seconds, and it is the reason a knife I finished in 1996 still looks finished today. A pit that is 1,000th deep this year is 4,000ths in 5 years, and by then it is a crater you can feel with your fingernail, and no restoration on earth removes it without eating the blade. If there is a step you think I left out, put it below and tell me which knife taught it to you. Next time out, I am doing the one everybody asks for, which is how to tell carbon steel from stainless without a magnet, a lab, or a guess in under a minute at a flea market table. The silent videos will keep showing you a brown lump going into a jar and a chrome mirror coming out, and they will keep leaving out the funeral. Shine is the cheapest thing you can buy for steel. Correctness is the only thing anybody pays for. Wash and read it first, $4. Mask the tang stamp, $2. Citric acid, 30 minutes, never overnight, $8 a pound. Steel wool and wet paper by hand, no power tools, $5. Flush and oil the joint, $6. Mineral oil on the bone, never water, $3. A stone, light pressure, chase the burr, $25. And wax it and get it out of that sheath, $1.50. Call it $55 for a kit that will restore every knife you will ever own, and about 40 of that you spend exactly once. Against that, set the $175 you lose the first time you sand a tang stamp flat and the temper you cannot ever put back after 10 seconds on a wire wheel. You can always take more steel off tomorrow. Nobody has ever put any back.